But I gotta say, and I'm friendly with the ladies on The View, but they didn't say anything about this week. Nothing. You know, because it's never been their thing to weigh in on the issues.
Did y'all really think we weren't gonna talk about Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, have you watched the show over the last 29 seasons? So you know, no one silences us.
Whoopi and The View are freaking out, and honestly, it's almost too entertaining to watch. Just last week, Bill Maher was publicly mocking The View for being too scared to even acknowledge what happened to Jimmy Kimmel. And now they're suddenly ready to talk. Something shifted. And the reason why is more revealing than anything they actually said on air.
I'm friendly with the ladies on The View, but they didn't say anything about this week. Nothing. You know, because it's never been their thing to weigh in on the issues. You know, it's just an upbeat party show. That's why they hired people named Joy and Sonny and Whoopi. But you know, girls, let me go out strong, okay? It won't be you. I promise. It's happened to me, and I may go out after this show. We don't know. We don't.
Here's what you need to understand about The View. This is a show that has made its entire brand out of jumping on headlines the moment they drop. Remember that clip from a few weeks back showing a former panelist admitting they sometimes get only a few hours to prep before wading into major national controversies? That's the machine we're dealing with. So when Jimmy Kimmel's suspension hit and The View went on air acting like they had absolutely no idea ABC had pulled him, viewers noticed. Bill Maher definitely noticed. He called them out directly for being too comfortable, too careful, too worried about protecting their own seats to even say the man's name. But here's where it gets genuinely interesting. The View eventually broke their silence. And what they said is going to be hard to take at face value.
Did y'all really think we weren't gonna talk about Jimmy Kimmel? I mean, have you watched the show over the last 29 seasons? So you know, no one silences us. And to all my friends in Italy who reached out, you have to know it's okay, we're still here, we're still broadcasting. And when the news broke last week about Jimmy Kimmel's suspension, we took a breath to see if Jimmy was going to say anything about it first. We did the same thing with Stephen Colbert.
Let's be straight, the idea that The View held back out of some principled caution, waiting to hear the full story before reacting, just doesn't hold up. That's not who they are, and the record proves it. When Stephen Colbert faced his controversy, The View didn't pause. They didn't wait for an official statement or a full picture. They jumped in immediately, reactions, critiques, hot takes, the whole routine. And when has Whoopi Goldberg, in the entire history of that show, ever stayed quiet to avoid stepping on a controversy? The answer is essentially never. So the idea that this time they were being thoughtful and measured? That spin doesn't survive contact with reality. Roll the tape and watch how it actually played out.
Then our show was on tape on Friday. But we are live here today. And we're getting into it now. You cannot like a show. Now, I want to make sure I got this right. To be clear, you cannot like a show and it can go off the air. Someone can say something they shouldn't and get taken off the air. But the government cannot apply pressure to force someone to be silent.
Did you catch how unusually careful Whoopi sounded while reading that statement? Almost robotic. Like every single word had been pre-approved by 3 layers of legal. This is a woman who has never in her career been known for careful, measured, teleprompter-hugging delivery, and suddenly she's threading every needle like her job depends on it. Because here's the thing, it might have. Jimmy Kimmel was already on his way back to ABC. The suspension was wrapping up. The View almost certainly knew the coast was clear before they opened their mouths. That's not courage. That's calculated timing. They waited until the risk evaporated, then walked out looking bold. Meanwhile, Bill Maher had been taking shots at The View the entire time while they were still hiding.
The FCC says they're going to go after maybe next the View. They got a new show lined up. It's going to be great. It's called Morning Wood with James Wood.
Maher didn't let up. He openly mocked The View, even joking that it might be next on the chopping block after Kimmel's suspension, that something newer and less predictable could come along and replace it. And look, to be clear, nobody should be rooting for The View to disappear. Like them or not, they've carved out a real place in daytime television over decades. But here's the problem that Maher's joke is actually pointing at. The View has developed a habit of firing off hot takes before the facts are even in. Twisting a headline, blowing a story past what the evidence actually supports. Presenting speculation as settled truth loudly, confidently, before the dust has cleared. That's not bold commentary. That's careless broadcasting. And careless broadcasting has consequences. Maher's joke about cancellation lands because it's grounded in something real. Credibility matters. And if you keep burning through it, eventually the joke stops being funny.
And, Jimmy, look, I don't think what he said was exactly right. I don't. We don't agree on that. He didn't lose his job for it. He said the MAGA crowd was trying to characterize the assassin as anything but one of them, because the 22-year-old kid, his family was MAGA. As if a 22-year-old with a trans girlfriend never rebelled against their family. But was he on the left? I don't know that either. And I hate to do this. I'm tipping the end of the show, which I work so hard on to keep a secret from the rest of the show. But it's too relevant. What I'm talking about at the end, I'm going to have to say now, which is that it is a fool's errand to try to say that these nuts who do these things are any team.
Here's something worth paying attention to. Maher is one of the very few voices on the left who was actually willing to say out loud that Jimmy Kimmel was wrong. Most other comedians, most media figures in that world, went out of their way to defend Kimmel's remarks, acting as though there was nothing problematic about them at all, that the outrage was manufactured, that the criticism was purely political. Maher didn't go there. He called it what it was. And that willingness to break from the pack, even when the pack is his own side, is exactly what set this moment apart.
But, look at what this guy is doing. I mean, Jimmy has every right to be wrong, but look at this guy. He was doing porn video games with furries. He was on a game called Furry Shades of Gay 3. This kid is in his basement with VR goggles on, getting virtually by a cartoon wombat. And you're going to put politics into this?
Maher cut through all the noise and made 2 points that are genuinely hard to argue with. First, Jimmy went too far. Second, what he said shouldn't have cost him his job. And both of those things can be true at the same time. Because let's be honest about what the suspension actually was. It wasn't real discipline. It was ABC performing discipline, putting on a show of accountability while fully intending to bring Kimmel back within weeks. A short timeout dressed up to look like consequences. Maher saw it clearly and said it plainly. And that kind of straight talk, the willingness to call a performance regardless of which side benefits, is precisely what made his commentary cut through while everyone else was spinning.
This kid doesn't belong in either party. He belongs in a straitjacket. He's an outpatient who should not be out. But you have the right to be wrong, or to have any opinion you want. That's what the First Amendment is all about. I was defending it last week on this show against what they're doing in England against the left. Come on, guys, be fair.
Maher kept the pressure on with sharp, sarcastic digs at Kimmel specifically for rushing to blame MAGA for a tragedy before the facts were even established. And the point underneath the humor was serious. A few minutes of basic fact-checking, that's all it would have taken. Kimmel had the time. He had a staff. He had resources. Instead, he made the call to jump in, ride the anti-MAGA wave, and assign a political narrative to a situation that turned out to have no clear political link at all. No MAGA connection. No ideology. Just a deeply disturbed individual. When that reality emerged, it didn't just make Kimmel look careless. It made him look like someone more interested in scoring political points than getting the story right. That's why Maher's mockery actually landed. It wasn't cheap. It pointed directly at something real, and the broader reminder it carried was one that applies far beyond just Kimmel. Facts don't care about your political timeline.
There's no organization. Antifa is a broad designation with no identifiable leader and no observable plan, like the Democrats. So, Jimmy, let me just say, pal, you did a great, funny show for 2 decades. You should be proud of that. If this firing goes for you the way it did for me, you'll get 23 years on a better net.
Okay, let's pause here and look at what was actually driving this whole situation, because it wasn't principle. The real reason Jimmy Kimmel got pulled from late night wasn't about the words themselves. It was about money. The moment those anti-MAGA remarks aired, Disney, ABC's parent company, watched its stock take a hit. And not a small one. Reports indicated Disney shares dropped roughly 2%, wiping out close to $4 billion in market value within hours of the segment. When that kind of number moves that fast, it doesn't matter what anyone believes about free speech or creative freedom, executives respond. ABC didn't step in because of a moral reckoning. They stepped in to stop the financial bleeding. Billions of dollars in shareholder value disappearing in an afternoon is not a situation that gets handled slowly or carefully. Kimmel's suspension wasn't about discipline. It was damage control, a calculated sacrifice to stabilize the stock and reassure investors. When the bottom line is on the line, the late-night host comes second.
Disney is letting the so-called comedy show return after a week's suspension. Some broadcasters are refusing to let his show back on air. Nexstar Media Group, which is the largest local TV broadcasting company in the US, announced that its stations will focus on continuing to produce local news and other programming relevant to their respective markets. What good news. Look, the company says, we made a decision last week to preempt Jimmy Kimmel Live following what ABC referred to as Mr. Kimmel's ill-timed and insensitive comments at a critical time in our national discourse. We stand by that decision, pending assurance that all parties are committed to fostering an environment of respectful, constructive dialogue.
Maher wasn't finished. He closed out his monologue by turning his sights on the Democratic Party itself, and honestly, given where the party is right now, it wasn't a hard target to hit. Since their significant losses in last year's elections, the DNC has looked like a party still trying to figure out what it actually is. The polished, unified political machine that once defined it has given way to something that looks a lot more like organized confusion. No clear leader to rally behind. No consistent message cutting through the noise. No coherent strategy beyond reacting to whatever the news cycle throws at them. Instead, the party increasingly leans on spectacle, attention-grabbing moments, performative controversy, theatrical gestures designed to keep the base engaged because there isn't much else holding it together right now. Maher's criticism hit because it didn't feel like an attack from the outside. It felt like a diagnosis from someone who actually wants the patient to recover and is frustrated that nobody seems to be listening.
This also comes after Sinclair, the broadcasting company that makes up America's largest ABC affiliate groups, announced that it would be preempting Jimmy Kimmel Live across ABC affiliate stations and replacing it with news programming. And you know what? They know that the audience has had enough of Jimmy Kimmel. Let's just look back at some of his comedy content. Here he is celebrating when they tried to censor Donald Trump.
Trump has been suspended from Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and even Snapchat. But don't worry, Mr. President, there are still plenty of apps you do have access to. You still have Spotify to drown out the sound of millions of people cheering as you leave. You still have Pet Finder since you're on the outs with Mike Pence. You have Cameo, which will soon be your primary source of income.
And now here's where the story takes another turn. Some media partners are reportedly pulling back from fully committing to Kimmel's return, hesitating because the financial risk still feels real. Networks that normally pay to carry Jimmy Kimmel Live are apparently weighing whether the association is worth it. And when revenue partners start hesitating, that's not a small signal. That's a warning sign. But zoom out for a second, because the bigger story here goes well beyond one late-night host and one suspension. What this hesitation actually reflects is a broader shift already taking shape across the media landscape. Audiences are tuning out. Advertisers are getting more cautious. Media partners don't want to be attached to controversy that costs them money without delivering results. For years, networks treated political grandstanding as a safe and profitable formula, edgy enough to generate buzz, popular enough to drive ratings. Now the cracks are showing. And the formula that felt untouchable just a few years ago is starting to look a lot more fragile.